This podcast may contain adult language, adult situations, spoilers, and some brief nudity, so parental guidance is suggested.
We have such sights to show you.
After about 5 minutes of this movie, you're gonna wish you had 10 beers.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
So, what would you little maniacs like to do first?
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Oh, well. La-di-da, la-di-da, la-la, yeah.
Welcome back to the Cinema Recall Podcast.
When a brilliant invention goes horribly wrong.
You're changing, Seth. Everything about you is changing.
All she can do is watch.
Don't go back to him.
I have to go back to him.
As he becomes the Fly.
Help me. Please help me.
Rated R. Starts tomorrow at theaters everywhere.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Recall Podcast. I am one of your hosts, The Vern. Today, we have a very special guest here with us today. One of the hosts of the Jet Up Reviews podcast show. We have Mr. Cameron Sulivan. Hello, Cameron.
I appreciate you, my dude. How is the Vern?
The Vern is doing well now that we have Mr. Monsieur Cameron here. Welcome to the show. I gotta say,
there you go, man. It's going up. It's going up.
I love your show. Just because of all the many people you have on there and just the random topics you have. I listened to one recently that you did on the Muppets and Jim Henson.
Thanks. That was an R-rated Muppet.
It was a very R-rated Muppet show, but I liked it. You guys had very different takes on the Muppets, and you kind of with your love of everything. It was so fun to listen to, and your show seems to have the same kind of like cadence as our show has. We just have people on and just start talking about random
Something
things
for everybody, baby. Oh man.
Right, and you kind of go off on like tangents just as we do sometimes, and I love that. I'm listening to friends talk, and that's the whole fun of it.
Absolutely.
So
we're talking about a gory movie today.
I know. Well, before we get into, because they already know, they clicked on the link. They know we're going to be talking about David Cronenberg's The Fly, but
Do they know?
I want to talk a little bit about the Jet Up Review podcast show. I mean, how did this show start off here? Let's talk to you a little bit. Let's get to know you a little bit more.
Basically, we had to fill that empty void, just in between work and just chores and the usual entertainment consumption. It was just like, well, I had started one with some pals, didn't really like how it went. They were just a filmmaker pal of mine and a actress filmmaker pal of mine, and don't get me wrong, I like their whole shtick altogether, and they're still doing it. And I was just like, and this was before COVID, and so I was just like, I don't really want to drive all the way to the studio, and if I'm gonna bitch, I better start doing it my own self. And then it just got to where it's like, hey, there's plenty of pals on Facebook. Let's just all, we all like reviewing stuff. Why don't we actually just all get together and, get ready to sum up this stuff and start with a variety of topics. And then it got to where it's like, hey, there's plenty of people who kind of just need to be thrown a bone. Let's interview them. So then it was like, it's got to be a variety show.
Oh, hell yeah. And I love the fact, too, that, like I said before, you guys have, like, just so many different topics and different things. And you interview a lot of, like, actors and directors. But you have, you did a whole show about the music and films of Ice-T. And
oh, yeah. That was fun. Yeah, anyone who just, like, you could talk about for hours is like, then jump into it. But don't half-ass it.
You had one about the Star Wars actors in the expanded universe, the Cloverfield trilogy.
Those guys were a treat. And I apologize for that episode taking forever to come out, but man, it was. We were pretty much just cracking each other open like a nut. It was like, I can't believe we went there.
But they have like episodes about covering the music of System of a Down and TV shows Law and Order.
Oh yeah.
Just what I like about your show is that it's never the same type of show each one. I mean,
I try to have something for everybody. I don't want to we got plenty of horror indie filmmakers, and it's always fun asking them. It's like, hey, how do you get past the snobs? How do you tell them I'm not making a Christopher Nolan budget, but I'm also not as mainstream, like independent? Like, I'm not going to give you probably what the Sam Raimi crowd's looking for either. I'm trying to be my own thing, and it's just interesting what they're all looking at. Some of them are just like, I just want to make a universal horror tribute monster movie, and then there's others who's like, I'm just doing my own thing. And
Well, I want to ask you about that too, Cameron, because you actually have, like actors and musicians appear and directors appear on your podcast show. How do you get these people to be involved with it? I mean, did you bribe them? Do you offer massages? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
basically it writes itself. Like, some of them have been in the can for a while and just coming out at the right times, especially for Black History Month and International Women's Month. And other times it's just like they'll reach out to you if they see you in some of the same groups. They're looking for any kind of just way to get out there. It's free marketing for them. And then they're happy to tell you an interesting story. But
okay. Yeah.
I interviewed the director of Ballistic X vs. Ever, and it was just mind blowing. I interviewed one of my favorite adult film stars. That was great too, because it was just like, wow, you're meeting people is like you grew up watching in some capacity, and you always thought they had a story to tell, and then it was just like, well, yeah, everyone's got a story to tell, but an interview that will be airing soon is Justin Beam, who is responsible for all the delicious Blu-ray content that you see on all your favorite Paramount, Severin, and Shout Factory Blu-rays.
Oh, okay.
I think he said it best in that just be patient. And I already had some patience, but it was just a matter of, just let it organically unfold, especially if you want an interview that you don't want to have any BS, in there.
Sure. Well, I'm commending you for all your work, and you definitely have inspired me in our show to try to reach out to more, filmmakers, and not just filmmakers, but actors and musicians to be in our show. So I thank you very much for that. I do know you.
Because you guys, you're always going into a complex film,
yes.
A movie that's maybe not even necessarily streaming everywhere, but like it's not easy to sum up, And I mean that's how it is. I always get annoyed when I listen to an otherwise decent or okay podcast and they just kind of take an about face, and it's like, well, if you're gonna go into anything, whether it's David Lynch, Aronofsky, Paul Thomas Anderson, Scorsese, Spielberg, it doesn't matter who it is. You got to dissect this film.
Yeah, very much so. But I do know you can find all episodes of the Jot Tip Review podcast. Basically everywhere you can find podcasts. They're on Good Pods and Spotify, and I think Podbreed, Apple Podcast.
Yep.
They're on Twitter at JatUpReview. I'll post links in the show notes there, so be sure to check that out. Now, before we get into our show, this is the point of the program where I have to take a quick little break and play some ad spots from some wonderful podcast shows. But before I do that, I gotta give a quick shout out to our sponsors right now, and you can help us out with this really quickly. Okay, Cameron?
You know it.
All right. So the first sponsor I want to just talk about briefly is Newsly. Have you heard about Newsly, Cameron?
I gotta check them out. Newsly. What's the scoop?
Cameron, Newsly is this, Cameron. Really cool concept. Newsly is an audio app that you download on your smartphone that will read the web to you in a human voice.
AI.
So no longer do you have to scroll through the internet and scroll through things and hurt your eyesight. Because I don't know about you, but I'm getting older now, and my eyes don't work out that well as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
My eyes are getting very weak. So with Newsly, I do not have to worry about my damn eyeballs getting weak anymore and me getting old. I can still be on the top of all the trending topics right there. And if you go to newsly.me, use the promo code RECALL, you would get 1 month free of their premium service. So that's really cool off right there. So thank you, Newsly, for having us be one of your featured podcasts on your network. So that's very cool. And the other one I'm going to plug really quickly is ExpressVPN. If you don't know what ExpressVPN is, it's
I know a VPN, but I don't know. Oh wait, no, is Express part of what's it called? I got it here on my thing. Is it part of? God, I can't speak today. Avast, is that part of Avast?
But possibly.
The orange logo.
All I know that ExpressVPN, it's a secure tunnel between your computer and the internet. And the great thing about ExpressVPN is that you can actually go to other sites outside of your country. So let's say that you want to know what Netflix is like in Asia, or if you want to know like Hulu is like in the Netherlands. You can use this ExpressVPN tunnel to make sure that your computer is not inflicted by viruses and other people trying to snoop around your system while you're viewing this other stuff. And it's a great thing too when you're out traveling and you're in another country, but you're like, you know what, I'm in another country, but I want to be able to view what my subscriptions are places. You can use the ExpressVPN to make sure your stuff is protected. And right now we're having a special promo. If you go to expressvpn.com/cinemarecallpod, you'll get 3 months free by using their services. So definitely check that out at ExpressVPN. And that's cover sponsors out of the way. And I will plug our what do you say now? Our I forgot
sponsor.
Yeah, well, we don't, our Patreon. I'll plug our Patreon members and everything like that at the end of the show. But we're gonna take a quick break. I'm gonna play those quick little ad spots, and then we'll be back to talk about The Fly.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join your host Cam Sully each week as he chats with special guests to discuss many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Have time for another podcast and enjoy listening to two idiots discussing films? Then look no further.
We are Movie Drone Podcast, two mates sitting down to discuss new releases, nostalgic films and anything and everything in between.
He's Steve.
And he's Mark.
Together we answer listener questions and set each other homework, giving each other a film to watch that the other hasn't seen, in the hope of unearthing hidden gems.
You can download us on iTunes, Podbean, as well as Google search us to find us on loads of different platforms.
Or email moviedronepodcast@hotmail.com. I think that's all.
No chance, mate.
Huh?
You've forgotten everyone's favourite feature, Mark's movie impressions.
Oh, I'd hope you've forgotten it too, to be honest.
No chance of that, mate. You think you should do one.
I hate you.
Come on, mate. Show 'em what you got.
I ain't no bomb. I ain't no bomb. Yo, Adrian! And if that hasn't put you off, give us a try. There's a small chance you won't regret it.
And we're back. You just heard some wonderful ad spots right there. I want to give a quick, small shout out to Mark and Steve from the Movie Drone podcast. We just played one of their podcast shows, and wonderful gents. I love them dearly, and I've always I love the fact that they mention us on their show when they play ads, and I've done that here and there. I'm gonna try and do that more often now. I'm gonna try to I play an ad, come back, and actually mention their names on here. So yeah, Movie Drone podcast, hosted by Mark and Steve. Great guys, out from the UK, and they review movies. They play movie quote games. They're just wonderful gents, so definitely check them out. But now we're here with Cameron from Jack the Reviews podcast, and you click the link so you know that we're going to be talking about David Cronenberg's The Fly. Cameron, asking you this, buddy, what is the very first David Cronenberg movie you ever saw?
I'm glad you brought it up. I was thinking it had to be either Naked Lunch or probably History of Violence. But
okay, yeah. I mean, I can understand a History of Violence. That would probably be like maybe a lot of listeners' first David Cronenberg movie, because between this one, The Fly, and A History of Violence, I think those are two of his most like well-known mainstream movies. But wow, Naked Lunch, that's a really off one to start with. Where did you first see that one?
You're gonna find this funny on Spike TV.
On Spike TV, they had Naked Lunch.
Or no, sorry. The History of Violence. Naked Lunch. So there's this thing called Rapid Share. I used it a lot back in the day, so that's why I became a big cult movie guy during college.
Okay, tell me more about this.
Okay, so it was like Napster, but for video and audio and music.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Okay, all right. But like, who turned you on to like Naked Lunch? I mean, did you read the book first by William S. Burroughs, or?
I had grown up studying bureaus and some of the other beat generation in high school and definitely in college, but I just was just like, yeah, I got to check this out. It sounds like an intriguing formula, and it's just he was the right guy to do that kind of movie, because it's just showing how quirky he is, and his satire just played better with that kind of mindset. So.
And I know this is the movie that Peter Weller made instead of doing RoboCop 3.
Oh, yeah. I had to watch every movie he was in, and that was one of them, and yeah.
Yeah, all right. That is probably going to be a movie for a different topic. But right now, we're going to talk about The Fly. I mean, when is the first time you watched this movie? Remember?
Good question. I definitely... I had seen parts of it, I think, growing up, but I think I fully saw it definitely in the 2010s. And it's like you and others have summed up before. It is a pretty mainstream Cronenberg film.
Very much so. I mean, this movie did very well in its budget.
I can't think of anyone who hasn't seen of it or heard of it in some capacity,
Oh, I know this is going to make me sound very odd, and it's going to date me incredibly, but I remember watching this movie with the family when I was a kid. Because it came out.
I can see that. It was easy to edit and have on cable TV.
No. We rented this movie.
Ooh.
I fully remember my mom rented this movie because it was a big blockbuster movie. I mean, I remember seeing ads for it everywhere. And when it came out to VHS, our video store even had like a beta display of the Fly pod and the foot sticking out of it. I mean, it was a pretty big, like, 5-foot display to promote this movie come out on VHS.
Jeez.
And I know this movie was a pretty big blockbuster success, and it got a lot of critical praise, especially for its makeup effects from Chris Wallace. And then I remember watching this movie with my folks and being really disgusted and also very impressed at the transformation that Jeff Goldblum went through in this movie. And the guy with his hand disintegrating with the puke. That's just one thing that would have been searing in my mind ever since I was a kid. And I'm pretty sure when my parents rented this movie, they probably saw the original 50s movie with Vincent Price. I don't know if you ever saw that one before.
I think I definitely had. It's a common mainstay on Turner Classic Movies.
Okay, all right. So I'm sure my parents watched that. They're thinking, oh, they're going to update some effects to this. All right, it'll be a little nasty, but it won't be too bad. And there are some moments where I think my folks want to close my eyes, especially during some of the set sequences, but luckily they don't really show you that much in there. And plus, at the time, I was like 8 years old, so a lot of stuff probably went over my head already. And when set stuff happened, my dad's like, "Oh, they're just wrestling on the ground." that's nothing. I'm like, and I remember telling my dad this. I'm like, so when I see wrestling matches, are they having sex? And my dad's like, well, maybe. Nothing wrong with that. Just, yeah. So I know that was there. And then I know I didn't watch this movie until recently. Just about I did watch it recently again this week, but I know it's a movie that I have seen here and there again. I find it amazing too to find out that this movie is produced by Mel Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
Right there in the credits, Brooks Films.
He wanted someone to follow up after he had helped produce The Elephant Man for David Lynch. So
yeah, that's I totally forget about that he did have a hand in making The Elephant Man. And I know that Mel Brooks didn't put his name in the credits because people think this is a comedy, but no one would think this movie is a comedy. I mean, right from the start,
unless you're just maybe a gore hound who just lost his mind.
Well, what I love the best about this, I mean, this came out like right after The Dead Zone. And the other movie that he did before this, I believe, was Videodrome.
Yeah.
And the credit sequence very much reminds me of typical Cronenberg movie fashion. I love the fact that, he has like the same, I guess, set designer and the same, I think there's like the same cinematographer of Videodrome, Mark Irwin, shot this. And, he's got his longtime collaborator, Howard Shore, doing the score for this.
Yeah.
I know a lot of listeners know Howard Shore for just doing the music for Lord of the Rings. But and he was also one of the first band members of SNL. But gosh, Howard Shore just did a lot of majority of Cronenberg films. I mean, Howard Shore is to Cronenberg what John Williams is to Steven Spielberg, or Angelo Badalamenti is to David Lynch. I mean, those just two people have just been doing stuff like nonstop. Now, let's get into your kind of like general thoughts about The Fly and just what you took most from this movie when you first saw it.
I think it was just one of those, much like all the other movies you're mentioning. It was just kind of just a big highlight of his career. It's gonna, much, and it's often compared to The Thing, which John Carpenter remade. But the difference was, that one, was assessed, after the fact when it was on video stores and TV airings, and this one was just kind of an instant hit, just because, aside from, a $9 million budget, grossing $30.6 million, it was, everyone was speaking the same language. Cronenberg had come from the B-movie school, but had already had some modest hits, and producer Stuart Cornfield was able to, be on the same page and make compromises with each other, and Mel Brooks was able to, again, hustle the studio and ask for, an increased, salary just to, Cronenberg was agreeing to do it for $750,000, and Brooks was like, no, let me get you $1 million.
And I love the fact, too, that it took a couple of features before Cronenberg decided to do this remake, because basic story about The Fly, and I'm pretty sure everyone who's listened to this has seen The Fly, but it's about a scientist named Brundle, played by Jeff Goldblum, and he invents this teleportation machine. And one night he gets drunk, as we all do, because he thinks his girlfriend is going back to her ex. So he gets drunk, decides to go into this pod to test out teleportation, but oh no, a fly goes into the telepod with him, and when he transfers into the other pod, the fly is no longer there. Well, it turns out that he has absorbed himself with the fly, and is becoming a fly. That's not spoiler alert, folks. That's just the movie, all right? That's what the movie's about, okay? I can't... If you're going, he becomes a fly, you would spoil the movie. I'm like, I can't spoil the movie. That's what it says in the trailers. It's in the back of the box. It's called The Freaking Fly, folks, all right? So deal with that shit. But I will say this, though. The 1958 version is very different because that one starts off like a woman is contacting the police because she has just killed her husband, and the whole structure of the movie is a flashback to find out how that happened. And dealt with another guy who also invents teleportation, and he also gets into a pod with a fly. But in the 58 version, they just like kind of switch bodies, so the man gets the fly's head, and the fly gets the man's head. Yeah, wait, that's right. Yeah, the man gets the fly's head, and the fly gets the man's head. I hope I said that right. It sounds confusing, but it's cheesy, it's fun, it's very campy, and I very much enjoy the 58 version, but I will admit the 86 version is much more superior. Let's talk a little bit briefly about...
People forget, it's a remake, so when everyone goes, remakes can't be good, I'm like, don't look around.
Yeah, there's that one right there, too. And I think it came out in that perfect time, too, because it was definitely came out pre, I guess, HIV and AIDS.
It's so wild how that's a contrast for that.
It's so weird. I mean, just because I know that at that time, AIDS and HIV was a new thing, and people could contract it from having unprotected sex, and it seemed like after Seth goes, or Mr. Is it Seth Brundle? I hope I said the name right here. I think I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
After he goes in the pod, he has like this major sex drive, and him and Geena Davis' character, they have sex like nonstop. And it's only after that happens where you get to see like his disintegration. Even though his disintegration was happening way before that, it seemed to happen just more and more. But I want to ask you just real briefly, what you thought about Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis in their main roles.
Well, and that's just it, so I had known, they were a couple in real life, and I had seen Earth Girls years before. So,
Earth Girls Are Easy?
Yeah.
Yes. That is another great movie.
It is interesting just looking at the trivia and how they, it just, they, like you said earlier, it's just like they got the right crew and a pretty straightforward movie to remake and build your own story off of. But it is very intriguing how, I mean, if you want to use it as a contrast to today's, abuse of science and, how everyone argues over vaccines and scientific research, it's kind of just that same kind of deal. Is like you have the charming scientist who even he doesn't realize how, he's just about to basically lose it. He's not thinking this through, and he's getting so consumed and greedy by this new power he's developed and being his own guinea pig while also having other people experience with this, and so it is interesting kind of seeing it as kind of a contrast to the AIDS epidemic, as, that was already infamous as, you had all these drugs that had not been properly tested and just basically just trying them out on anyone who was desperate for some kind of cure.
Yeah, and not only just that allegory, when watching it again this time, and feel free to disagree with me on this or not, but when Seth adapts the fly's ability, he wants to consume more. He wants to, he becomes a lot more greedy and needs more things. And I always thought that sort of tapped into the sort of 80s zeitgeist of everything's got to be about me. I need to consume more. I need to get more things.
He's so charming. He is the villain at first, but it's like, no, there's only one answer to this. He is ultimately the antagonist who's, he means well, but ultimately he doesn't.
I think his own greed and those things he needs, it becomes his downfall as well, because he wants to be more powerful. I need to do more of this stuff. I feel awakened and alive, and it kind of reminds me of the whole guru health things that were happening in the mid 80s where people were just trying to like better themselves and they felt more powerful and they felt better. They felt like, well, I'm a better person and you should be like me because we can be better together. That's what he says to Geena Davis's character. He's like, you should go to the pod with me and we'll become a powerful. You're not on my level anymore, all right? You're slowing me down.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's just at first he wants to interact and embrace her into what this mad predicament that he's found, have her be part of the insanity, and then after a while, just the more everyone starts rejecting him and looks at him like a freak, then he's just like, yeah, no, you, everybody else must, be away from me. But
did you find it kind of odd because when we first meet this character, he's very shy and timid. I mean, he's a guy that threw up as a kid riding a tricycle. He gets motion sickness. That's why he invented these telepods, is because he wanted to travel somewhere and not feel sick anymore. But once he got infused with that fly and that fly mentality, he was like, all right, I'm in a human body right now. I want to consume things. I want to become more powerful. I would give you all these powers. Look at this. You're going to be a lot stronger. Your sex drive is going to be off the roof. You can do all these wonderful things as well. And he starts to adapt that fly's abilities to consume and want to be powerful. He goes to that one bar and he's like, you know what? I'm going to arm wrestle you and I get to take the girl home. And that over bravo macho attitude that has been seen a lot in 80s movies, and I think that element still holds up today.
Oh, totally. He becomes a toxic being at the end, which is appropriate because you're playing a fly. But it is, like you say, it keeps its tone steady without losing a grasp of it, and just thank God it did. And as many knew, Cronenberg turned down helming Total Recall.
That's right. I did. Oh, good thing you brought that up. Thank you very much. I totally forgot about that. What do you think
this would have been like? Because he and Verhoeven are kind of part of the same ilk, even though Verhoeven's Dutch and he's Canadian. They're both kind of part of the the same coin.
Yeah, but I know that Cronenberg seems to be obsessed with stuff that has to do with like the flesh and like the metamorphosis
body
of like
terror. But they both had the sexual psychology and just other. Well, ultimately, Verhoeven goes for way more satire, and often studios in America weren't really paying attention to what he had to offer. They were just like, just add a sci-fi template, and he went along with it. It's like, okay, I'll make fun of corporate greed and use a cyberpunk mentality to make and insert all this other religious and sexual subtext. And
I think if
exploding heads.
I think if Cronenberg directed Total Recall, it would be a much more explicit R-rated movie.
Oh yeah,
than what we had.
There probably wouldn't be any shootouts or anything. It would probably have more of just weird happenings and close-ups and just more. Yeah.
I guarantee you, there would have been a sequence with Quattro, that little alien in that stomach, probably fondling the three boob girl woman or something like that. Just be that there'd be something like was like a Quattro male and a Quattro female getting together and having like some sort of like stomach sex orgy thing. I just imagine something like Cronenberg doing something with that, just making it or having that Quattro come out of the stomach be a lot more graphic. I can't imagine him not doing things like that.
Yeah, going all the way.
Yeah, very much so. What do we think about Geena Davis in this?
I am surprised she never really became other than that recent Exorcist TV show, which she was really stellar on. I'm surprised she didn't really become a final girl scream queen. You would have thought after this one.
Oh yeah, sure. I thought it was great because you mentioned earlier that Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis was a couple, and they made those characters' relationship feel very real and believable.
Without being a vanity piece, you know? It's not the Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton deal where you're like, okay, but...
Like, I could totally see why she would be attracted to him. And I can see how the relationship could develop. And
the filmmakers dug it. They liked how they had similar mannerisms because they're just similar, you know, New Yorkers. And it's like, yeah, you guys already speak the same language anyway.
Yeah. Oh. And I found their blossoming relationship and their downfall to be very beautiful as well. I'm going to go into spoilers here, but that very end sequence when Butterfly becomes full-on Fly and is an animatronic puppet, and it's the very kind of last shot of the movie where he's holding that shotgun to its head, and she's crying. Look, I know it's a puppet, but god damn it, I got feels watching that again this time. And it reminded me when I was a kid, the first time watching that movie, and having the feels like, oh my gosh, no, he's just so sad once he put up his misery, oh my gosh. But, just heartbreaking stuff. And even before that,
Do you feel like this could only be made back then? Because, like, there's so many... I don't know if it's just people had their heads up their asses and they just weren't thinking about the hard questions or what. Because it seems if you do a movie nowadays and you have material like this, everyone wants to add additional layers onto it. And it's just like, just listen to the commentary as what the filmmaker was going for. You get it or you don't. You know?
God, I have not heard the commentary about this. I'd be very curious to hear the comment.
I know, but yeah, nowadays I think everyone would, you know, take a baby attack as, this is a... Because, you know, heated topics like, you know, gun control and abortion are just way more violently outraged now, and I think people just wouldn't be able to separate reality and just...
they would think there's some sort of like hidden message.
This is a liberal commercial, and then you'd have older conservative guys calling it a woke movie, and you're just like, you guys missing it all together. It is a, you know, Twilight Zone extended episode that's really, really good because it's...
So are you saying this because the Geena Davis character, so she does get pregnant during this movie, and she wants to have an abortion. So you're thinking other people will hear that going, well, this character is going to have an abortion, so that means this filmmaker is for abortions or against abortions.
Yeah, it's amazing how, I mean... We look at some of the celebrity scandals we've had lately, and people just forget that the world is gray, but people want to approach it with a black and white approach, this or that, and it's like, well, it's not this or that. It's just what's here in the moment, and that's what's either will or won't happen, or maybe it'll go, maybe there is no plan A or plan B, maybe there's plan C through F, but I get it. But it's an emotional topic, people get wound up, but even in a sci-fi movie, people will just lose their heads about it. And it's like, there is no such thing as a mindless movie. Like, even movies that require you to just turn your brain off ultimately will have some moment that is interactive. And it seems like movies get the wrong audience. You have movies that demand an audience's attention, that attract a lot of people who want something that doesn't require much thought, and then vice versa. You see people who expect too much out of a movie and they go to a movie that really requires very little input. So it just seems like we just keep getting just the wrong audiences, but this fortunately found its proper audience. It just, the people who want to examine it deeper are going to like it, while the people who aren't paying as close attention and kind of just going for the B nature, you know, premise that's enhanced by A-list talent, you know, it's just that it can appeal to both crowds, kind of like Verhoeven. Like, plenty of people going to Total Recall just because they're like, hey, Schwarzenegger blowing shit up, and then there's people who are going to watch it and be like, oh wow, this is a very atmospheric cyberpunk movie about what would happen if we colonized Mars and it became a scum-fested, you know, planet just like Earth.
That's good point.
It's just amazing how you gotta just subtext it all.
And
I mean, I saw some of this with the recent Candyman. I saw people bashing it. I didn't particularly care for it, but I'll get to that another day. But one person gave a shitty review just acting like, oh, because there were cops as the villain, it's a bad movie. I'm like, you are missing the whole essence of Candyman. It's showing the wrongdoings of society all enveloped together, and then how, the main character, before he became a villain, was a wronged individual, basically on wreaking havoc on those who he sees as, scumbags. It's just, but like you say, people just don't want to think. They just want to, and the baby scene, I think it was done and effective enough to where those who are uncomfortable about the topic don't have to think about it long and hard.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, Kevin made a lot of great points when it comes to subtext and movies and how people can see things one way and another way. I think The Fly has a lot of those elements because, as you mentioned before, you can enjoy The Fly as being a very fun sci-fi movie about a guy who turns into a fly. I mean, that's the basic level right there. But you can also enjoy The Fly on the other lower subtextual levels when it comes to male and female relationships, or just relationships in total, how it deals with sex and how your body changes after sex. And also it deals, and I'm going to try my best to sound way more intelligent than I actually am, it also deals with the whole power struggle, deals with notions of abortions, and like I mentioned before, possibly something with gun control. Not so much gun control, but I like the fact that
kind of just the playing God aspect, like many science movies. But,
as well as good science movies
that goes as far back as the Universal horror and
sure.
Edgar Allan Poe even.
But the way that not only does Seth's body begin to change because he's become a fly, his mind becomes changed too, and he feels more powerful than he's ever felt before in his life, and he basically just wants to try to control it all. And I think his end goal process is to try to infuse both him, Geena Davis' character, and his new unborn son into one being, and to become this all-powerful. And if that becomes powerful, then he wants to assimilate other people and have them become in the pod, to have them become this one big, powerful creature. It kind of reminds me of Tetsuo and Akira.
Yeah.
Just assimilating all these all the different body
Imagine
parts
fighting on screen.
Oh my gosh! Can you imagine Cronenberg doing a version of Akira if he got that big budget?
He might actually be the best kind because he won't be trying to do Christopher Nolan or Michael Bay type epic. He'll be trying to do just a movie where he puts you inside the mind of the person. And I mean, I'm sure many who also know about this film also know about how there was a cat and ape mutated together, and even though it's included as a special feature, just the thought of it just felt like it was just, again, putting a bastardized animal out of its misery, and it just felt gratuitous. So it is interesting how that had to be cut, and I can't blame him. Cats is a touchy subject. Who doesn't love a cat?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought it was pretty touchy subject to have the baboon go inside during that one scene, and it comes out inside out.
Yeah. I guess because they figured, okay, we already know monkeys are test subjects. We can just get past that unpleasant subject. It is interesting how everyone was intimidated by it on set, but fortunately Goldblum was able to gain its trust, according to the Wrangler who worked on it. And that's very interesting how, it could have gone sideways just from that filming alone. But it's just a totally rare movie because you just always hear all about these other just terror stories about movies filmed overseas that had a lot of horse deaths and even just on professionalism. And it's just, this is a total rarity. I can't find anything, not that I look for that, but it's just so pleasant to know about a movie with morbid subject matter that nothing shady happened behind the scenes. There weren't any producers demanding overriding the director who demanded final cut. There wasn't any sexist or prudish, executives. There weren't any animal mistreating or actors being mishandled. There wasn't anything. And the special effects guys, Chris Wallace, who you later directed the sequel. That makes better sense. I didn't realize he worked on the first one, but you might know him from his work on, movies such as Gremlins and
yes,
Practical Puppetry, and
that makes total sense right now when you mention Gremlins, and you see the
same kind.
That is so epically cool because the puppets
and
worked.
Dante, bless him. He should not have left the industry, and been an independent guy. He should be as big as he was in the 80s.
Oh, even more so. Yeah, that is absolutely great. Oh my gosh. Wait.
Wallace, I know, does the convention scenes a lot and just seems like always just a very hysterical guy. He'll tell you about funny moments where basically his back went out just doing,
Oh, jeez.
Impossible effects. But yeah, this was around the same time he had done other stuff like Deep Star 6, what were some other ones? House 2.
Oh my gosh, House. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Do you work on the Neverending Story?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Enemy Mine was another one, but yeah.
Shoot.
But yeah, he had already worked with with Cronenberg on Scanners as well as the melting makeup effects for Raiders of the Lost Ark. So there you go. And
shoot, yeah, just powerful stuff there. You add in those great puppeteer work with the great cast and acting. I thought John Getz is another actor in The Fly that is worth mentioning.
Yeah.
He plays the boyfriend of Geena Davis, the character. Very slimeball individual, but he is the one to help save the day.
It's a total irony, right? You would think, it's just like a kid's movie, or a chick flick, love triangle. The opposing force is automatically the asshole, and in this case, is like, well, he may not have good intentions. He may just be here again he doesn't want an actual relationship, but along the way, he does actually legit want to be your savior, and sure enough, he is the unlikely hero. And it's like you say, it's a plot twist. It avoids predictability.
What I love about it, because I'm sure watching it, a lot of people were gonna get sort of like the Beauty and the Beast vibe to it, where
that was almost on her. That was about 3 years before that.
Yeah, well, I know, he's like, the story's old, but he's turning into this monster, but she still loves him. And I know people who are watching this for the first time going, the power of love will help change him back to be the man that he is before. And I'm pretty sure that once he starts going that transformation and it starts getting more and more, especially when his ear starts falling off, or when he gets to be not quite the fly mode, but his face is covered in the makeup work on this, folks, is just beyond amazing. What makes this movie still a classic to this day is because it's all practical effects. There's hardly any CGI in this because CGI would not work. I think the only CGI we have is on the computer screen itself. It's just...
and like you say, Cronenberg is kind of like George Romero, where he's able to again just dive into, this is kind of like Monkey Shines, where he is diving into a mad scientist type gimmick and then fleshing it out, no pun intended, and just, and speaking of which, you brought up the John Getz character. I forget that he appears in the sequel, and he kind of doesn't really do anything.
We'll get the sequel just kind of briefly about that, but
I don't want to wreck that. It's kind of forgotten.
I just watched it just recently. It's, I don't think it's a bad sequel.
AMC actually would often do marathons with both of them.
Sure.
For my longest time.
Gosh, well. Damn, I feel like we should probably get into the sequel just briefly, but I want to mention one quick thing about the makeup effects. What I love the best about it is that you can still see the actor performing with that makeup on. Like, the makeup doesn't take anything away from the actor, it just enhances it. Like, I still feel like I am watching Seth Brundle become Brundlefly.
Still Stan Winston, Rick Baker level, where you're just like, see, they cared about doing as good a job as what the story asked of them versus, oh wow, I just want to showcase. There wasn't any temptation to just do it because it was cool. It's like, no, this is what the scene was storyboarded as and what it requires.
And the fact that Jeff Goldblum didn't have any sort of like vanity about himself to make him to look that hideous and disgusting, even to the point at the very end where, it's a puppet, but you can still see him perform in that suit or makeup or whatever it was is just absolutely just amazing. And you forget you're watching an actor. I'm actually watching a character, and there's that tender sequence. I think both Geena Davis and Jeff Goldblum are, sitting together, and things of his body starts falling off, and she hugs him, and he's afraid that he's dying. And I'm sure this is what a lot of people who had to deal with people who were dying of HIV and AIDS at that time were dealing with, because here's someone that they love for years and their body is like disintegrating, deteriorating, just like Jeff Goldblum was. And it also has to do with like other serious diseases, like cancer and other things that are just don't have this cure, and your body's like deteriorating and falling apart, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah,
it's just heartbreaking.
Well, and that definitely makes better sense with the AIDS contrast, because that's how we were at the time. It was just like there's and this still is. There is no cure for AIDS.
Yeah,
you get it, and kind of like how this people assume how this is all gonna happen. Just for one experiment. There's multiple stages for once it continues. The more he experiments on himself, the more he makes himself even worse, and it's kind of what a lot of the drug companies are doing. They're going with incomplete data, and I've heard many stories about people in the black market trying to get a so-called cure for AIDS from shady ex-pharmaceutical guys.
Jeez.
And it's kind of interesting how people are so involved with the cost and not learning about it that they're doomed to just repeat the same mistake, and instead of just, put funding into studying it and actually finding a cure, instead of, it'll cost you your life. It'll cost you, both legs,
sure,
an arm. And that's kind of what this does good too. This doesn't try to go into too many corners and be unorganized with its so-called science and premise. I think, like you said earlier about the animation, I think a studio nowadays would just be concerned with the effects, because they clearly weren't paying attention to the original movie of what made it good. And so they would probably have a half-assed script that would probably try to be multiple things poorly organized together, and probably have a great cast, A-list cast, and cheesy looking effects, and it just wouldn't work, because this knows how to.
And they would shy away from all those. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it would try. No, that's.
They would shy away from all the uncomfortable topics.
It would, it would tiptoe, and then it would make you feel like it's holding back or not. A bunch of incomplete ideas all stapled together, as an essay. It doesn't work. And I mean, honestly, don't get me wrong. Some movies it can work okay. I know many who like some of those other experiment gone wrong movies like Doom and Deep Blue Sea and all that. But that's popcorn junk. This is trying to be both a good genre picture for a popcorn crowd and a deeper crowd.
I guess if you wanted to have the big kind of like slotty remake and whatnot, you could just watch The Fly 2.
Hopefully they can find the right kind of person who does over-the-top movies already, too. That's what I would be worried about.
I think like Joe Dante would be like a fun guy to remake The Fly.
He would probably do it. I don't know that he could live with himself, though, because
I know
he's like just as anti-Hollywood as it comes. He doesn't like doing remakes and shit like that.
Enough. I just pictured some guys doing a complete wacky version, kind of like remake the original Fly from the 50s. But get into The Fly 2, just really briefly. This one stars Eric Stoltz as the son of the Fly.
He tried.
And the movie begins with a woman who is supposed to be Geena Davis, but it's clearly not Geena Davis, giving birth to this larva.
And she dies.
She dies.
You already feel like that's a cop out. You're like, no, don't bring a character back if she's gonna die.
Yeah. So this little kid is found in this cocoon, and he has this disease where he grows a lot up faster. You know, like think of the movie Jack with Robin Williams. You know, but set in a science lab. So when he turns 5 years old, he looks about 18. But he's super smart. He's kept in this facility. He gets a girlfriend who is Princess Vespa from Spaceballs because and Mel Brooks did recommend that they use her in this, which is great. But one night he discovers that the scientists are spying on him and his girlfriend, and he rages out and he just goes into complete massive, and he's changed into Fly. But in this one, he goes into a cocoon before it becomes full-blown Fly. It does have, like I said, Chris Wallace directed this movie, and it does have some really great practical puppet effects. There's a sequence when they try to teleport a dog, but the dog comes out really deformed. And there's a sequence when Eric Stoltz goes to meet the dog, and the dog's all deformed, and he's petting the dog, and he has to put the dog out of his misery. That sequence there does make me tear up a little bit, because, god damn it, that puppet work is just really good at making me feel for that dog. And I love that. And
yeah,
I even like the ending, too, where they actually do kind of get revenge on the evil scientist that is using the son for his own evil money-grubbing needs, and he gets his just desserts at the end. That's also very kind of cool. If you were to just cut out at least a good, 10-15 minutes, especially the blossoming relationship between Eric Stoltz and Daphne and Suida, which didn't work so well in that movie. Cut this down a little bit, and if we had this be an hour and 15 minutes, yeah, good enough sequel. I didn't mind it. It's not as deep as the original one. I do love that they did try to match a lot of Cronenberg's elements to it to make it seem like it matched that movie, even though it doesn't do as nearly as good. It was okay. Do you remember The Fly 2?
Not as much. I remember him running around and trying to break back into the lab and other stuff like that. Just kind of. But yeah, I need to examine it again. But I definitely don't recall it being anywhere near just why did they bother? It was just kind of.
It was a cash grab.
Cooks.
It was a total cash grab because, the first movie, like I said before, $9 million budget,
and it raised the bar so big, so it was just hard to add any kind of complimentary,
And you mentioned before, John Guest does return in the sequel, but he's just there for plot exposition.
Mm-hmm.
To get the characters. I don't know why he was in the movie to begin with. There's no reason. What they should have done is after, he's seeing his, ex-girlfriend give birth to this lava creature. I would have loved it if the lava creature jumped up and killed him at the same time and just get him out of the picture as well. Do something. I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it tries to not be too tragic while dealing with, again, just more uncomfortable subject matter. I can at least applaud them for not trying to do a lazy gore fest, which is what, every other sequel would have probably done. It would have been hey, we got a surprise hit with a Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th movie. We got to be just as gross or even more raunchy.
It does get pretty gross. There's a sequence where the fly does throw up on a guy's face and it melts the dude's face, and it's...
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did forget about that.
It is, I gotta say...
But for the most part, it was pretty restrained versus others, which would have probably been I think they went to the movie because of explosions. Well, we better have more explosions. It wasn't that kind of deal,
Yeah. I think if you're more of a person that's a fan of makeup and practical effects, to watch
you're going to see it eventually if you just like 80s movies in general, but it's probably the main highlight.
Yeah, that's everything. Otherwise, you can just probably skip it, but if you're me and like makeup effects, yeah, they're pretty cool. But that's like the only good thing about it. Cronenberg's The Fly does have the great makeup effects, but also has the great acting from Geena Davis and Jeff Goldblum. It's got the great musical score by Howard Shore. Special effects by Chris Wallace, just amazing work all around. I love the fact that Mel Brooks created Brooks Films to release something like this and put the money up for it, which is absolutely great. I know a lot of people just think of Mel Brooks as just being a comedian and the guy who directed Blazing Saddles.
I mean, he did do Young Frankenstein, but yeah, that's as close as he got to, horror themed.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He is apparently a fan of the genre, and it is interesting how, because people aren't experienced with that, we often assume, oh, they can't do that. And it's like, more often than not, a lot of people want to make something, but they're often are only asked to do movies they have previously done that are similar to that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, yeah, it's the same kind of deal where until you just get your foot in the door or given that chance, it's kind of like when you're doing a job, but you don't have the skill set. Well, I only get that job if you take a chance on me. I can do cash register duty. I can do knitting. I can do just simple mopping, but you got to give me that chance. And unfortunately, it's easier said than done.
Yeah, sure thing.
Some people aren't good at it, even though they want to do good at it. I've seen some people try to do horror action, and I'm just like, nah, you guys aren't too good at that. You should just stick to what you were doing before, which was...
Well, that's a great thing, too, about, Brooks, because he knows he probably can't do horror so well, but he has an eye for people who can tell good stories.
Yeah,
and so he did good projects. He's like,
oh, this Spielberg, where he's just looking at people who he admires and he's saying, hey, I want to give you a chance since I got a studio that shares your vision, and I want to give you that template and any other resources you need, any other phone calls I can make.
Exactly. All right. Well, did you have, just before we do close up our review about The Fly, was there one sequence of The Fly that you liked the most?
Man. I could probably take some other scene in the lab or something, because unlike other sci-fi movies nowadays, which kind of just focus on, like you say, just half-assed effects or something, it's just shot in a way where, like you mentioned earlier about the characters, claustrophobia and such, it just does it in a way where, nowadays it would probably be just overdone eye candy. They really shoot the lab scenes very intricately. So yeah, it's probably a scene from that, and you would probably get a general gist of where the unpredictability of where the movie's going.
Sure. Well,
I mean, if you were to catch that, they used to air both of these on AMC cable channel quite a lot.
Okay.
I don't know if they still do, but that might be a way to find it, especially if you want it slightly toned down from TV. But I think it's streaming on Prime or Tubi.
It's streaming. I saw mine on HBO Max.
Oh, okay, even better. So it's part of the vault.
Yep.
Perfect. Part of Fox. Yeah. Okay. So that would be the place to.
In fact, you can watch both The Fly from '86, The Fly '58 version with Vincent Price, and The Fly 2 as well.
Did you see the comment from Vincent Price? Apparently, he was shown the movie after Goldblum wrote to him that I'm a fan of your original movie and we're hoping to do it justice, and he's like, "Oh, it was good. Although we went a little too far near the end."
Okay.
And it's an interesting contrast. Most of the time people just don't see other stuff because they're just too close to it, or
sure.
Think, but it's interesting how two different mentalities. One that was part of a generation which did more talking instead of showing, and then he's getting to the generation that's all about showing and less talking.
And I will say both endings of both the '58 version Fly and the '86 Fly are both kind of shocking. I mean, I know the Cronenberg's Fly is a lot more grotesque and whatnot, but there's some great little moments of the '58 version of Fly that I love very much, and the makeup effects at the time were still pretty cool. And it's got a much more cheesy mystery tone to it. It's a lot more brighter. It's not as dark as Cronenberg's version, but it's still a fun one. I think my favorite sequence of 86 Fly is going to be that very last moment when the fly puppet's holding that shotgun to its head, and G. Davis is like crying, saying, "No, I can't," and the fly's like just picking the shotgun, like, "Take me out of my misery." That's a heartfelt moment. And it's a heartfelt moment done with fucking puppets, alright? And if you can make me cry using puppets, then I'm sorry, that's just a great moment for me.
Or just from anything like this. Imagine who else this could have helmed this, and this could have backfired. Or maybe they could have hired even more. They could have reduced the budget effect to the effects and said, no, we want it to look cheesy.
Exactly.
This wasn't a Samurai Cop or Troll 2 scenario. Everyone spoke the same language, had the same exact idea.
100%. Well, what would you give The Fly, David Cronenberg's Fly? Out of 5 fly swatters?
Definitely a 4 out of 5. Okay. It might not be a movie you watch on the regular basis, but there's just no denying just the investment in the vision. It just, because like you've already said before, this is a movie that is very visual, especially in the end, because there's just so many other movies that kind of take themselves too seriously or can't get the audience to be on their same page, so you just have to say an imperfect but entertaining movie. It's not that kind of film where, and just like you can accept even Goldblum's later performances, you can accept the first Jurassic Park as a very solid genre mashup. It's mysterious as much as it is scientific and terrifying. And it's the same movie. You can call this both a romantic sci-fi as well as a tragic, monster film. And that there was kind of a bit of a rebirth of this. Once again, no pun. In the 90s when they kind of tried to combine various genres. Species kind of did that, but that was that was lighter. That was not as deep. And then there was other movies that just kind of just went AWOL. They're just like, well, just throw, racist Marines, throw in phantasm type effects artists, throw in, a predator type creature that turns invisible, and just a famous actor with 10-year-old dialogue, and it's really no different than a direct-to-video Roger Corman movie. But I think we've come a long way, and people are still looking for a film that they can use as a reference point, and it's just kind of a shame. I'm just so tired of everyone ripping off the Terminator or a classic Star Trek episode or Twilight Zone moment. You're just like, dudes, just be inspired, storyboard this.
Or just I like the fact too, because Cronenberg took the idea about The Fly, read the original short story, saw the movie, and was like, you know what, we can do something different with this.
Exactly.
And I like that very much. So, cruise with this. I'm giving this one about 4.5 as well, just because I think it's a solid movie, solid storyline. I love the fact that after The Fly is dead, guess what? The movie's over. There's no coda at the end telling you.
There's no setting it up for an Easter egg after the credits.
It's just like, that's it. Movie's done. And like done, over with. So I'm giving it about 4.5 just because it's a very tightly structured screenplay, and direction
just
is
a
great.
Rarity.
Yeah. So that is great right there. So that's going to kind of wrap up our conversations on The Fly. So our next episode about David Cronenberg's features is going to be on the movie Crash. And I know we're going to bring along the guys from the Film Rage podcast.
Woo! Yeah. I've had them on.
To talk about Crash. And if you don't know what Crash is, it's about people who get turned down by car crashes and have sex. With James Spader and Holly Hunter and Elias Cortez, the guy who was Casey Jones in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. But yes, that will happen next week. Or so not next week, but it'll happen sometime later on in the future. I'm not quite sure exactly when I'm going to be recording that one for sure. But you can check out our episodes of Cinema Recall over on our website, cinemarecall.net. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, GridPods, Spotify, anywhere you can hear podcasts. You can also get bonus episodes and extended episodes like this one right here on our Patreon page, patreon.com/cinemarecallpod. And this is the moment of the show where I give a special shout out and thank you to all of our wonderful Patreon members. So in no special order, hold on. Oh, there's a lot of people to mention here, so I gotta give water. All right, so we gotta thank Mr. Chris Revel of Let's Chat with Chris Revel. I gotta thank Mr. Donnie Roberts, who wrote the Deep Sea Anthologies. Thank you, Donnie. I gotta thank Linda Castro from Bed Knobs and Broomflits. I gotta thank Matt and Ashley from Mashley at the Movies. I gotta thank Mr. Jason Soto from Rabbit Hole Podcast. Thank you. I gotta thank Jeanette Mickenham from AKA Jeanette. I gotta thank Harvey Andrus, who is mine and Ashley's guitar player for our No Doubt 90s girl rock cover band, Your Ex-Girlfriend, Harvey Andrus. Thank you very much, Harvey. And then lastly, I gotta thank all the gals from Shot and Applaud Podcast, Jen, Lydia, and Naomi. Shot and Applaud, thank you very much for being a supporter of us. Love you dearly. Thank you, Jen, so much for the wonderful write-up that you did for Podchaser's top podcasts, thing you did for the best podcast of 2022. Appreciate that very much. But yes, that's it. Before we do go, really quickly, Cameron, tell the listeners out there any new things coming up on the Jacked Up Reviews podcast show and where we can find you.
Anytime. JURS podcast is on Anchor, Podbean, just about every place where you listen to podcasts. We try to always get just some engaging chat. So there's likely going to be some cult TV show that you're in love with, whether it's Captain Power, Lovecraft Country, or even Deadwood.
Oh.
And every once in a while, we all want to talk about the same thing. So then we just start talking about what are the best moments, what are the best villains, what are the best things in general about this saga. Sometimes we'll do a funny ranking. Yeah, okay. You can find that on most podcast platforms as well as Instagram.
I'll post links of that on the show notes as well. But that's it right now. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us, and we love you dearly. Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.